Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something literally game-changing for developers. We're going to look at how to build a fully production-ready conversational AI interface, and we're doing it using an incredibly clever tech stack. We're talking a totally seamless integration of the OpenAI SDK, Google's Gemini models, and the Chainlit framework. Let's dive right in.
But hey, before we jump into the actual build, we've got to address the elephant in the room, right? Expensive API costs. In the past, if you wanted to test robust agentic frameworks, it usually meant swiping a credit card and just watching your API usage drain with every single prompt. So, how exactly do you build a really powerful OpenAI agent without paying those hefty fees? Well, that is the core problem our source material beautifully solves today.
Here is our zero-to-hero roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Setup and cost-saving configuration. 2. Building your first AI agent. 3. Creating the chat interface. 4. Real-time streaming and memory. And 5. Equipping agents with custom tools.
All right, starting off with Section 1, Setup and Cost-Saving Configuration.
To lay the groundwork here, we're going to follow 3 primary steps. First up, we just install the open-source OpenAI Agents SDK. Easy enough. Now, step 2 is actually really interesting. Because we're using Jupyter Notebooks for the build environment, we need to apply a library called Nest Asynchron.io. That basically just allows our asynchronous Python functions to run smoothly right inside the notebook. And finally, step 3, we configure our backend provider. And honestly, this is where the real magic happens.
This step brilliantly illustrates the ultimate cost hack. See, because the OpenAI SDK is open source, it doesn't actually lock you into using their paid models. By leveraging the async OpenAI class, we can just override the default settings. We pass in a third-party API key and a custom base URL. So in our case, we're pointing it directly at Google's free Gemini 2.0 Flash model. Think about that. You get the ultra-robust, industry-standard OpenAI framework, but with the completely free engine running under the hood. How cool is that?
Moving on to Section 2, Building your first AI agent.
Okay, so with our budget essentially secured, creating an agent within this framework is remarkably simple. You really just need to pass 3 core parameters into the agent constructor. First is the name, which just gives the agent its basic identity. Second is the instructions. Now, this one is absolutely crucial. This is where you define the persona. You tell it you are a helpful assistant, or you are an expert data scientist, whatever you need. And third is the model parameter. That's exactly where we plug in that free Gemini Flash configuration we just built.
Now, to truly understand how the agent actually processes tasks in Python, our source provides this fantastic analogy using biryani. Think of synchronous execution like ordering biryani and just sitting idly by the door. You're doing absolutely nothing else until it arrives. It completely freezes your application. Asynchronous execution, on the other hand, is like ordering that biryani, and while it's being prepared, you go clean your room, maybe finish up some homework, and then you just accept the food when it's finally ready. By running our agent asynchronously, our app can multitask instead of just freezing up while waiting for the AI to figure out its response.
The really crucial takeaway here is how the agent operates completely autonomously. You hand your prompt over to a method called the runner. Once that runner triggers the agent, its autonomous lifecycle completely takes over. It's like a smart little manager. It breaks your task down, decides if it needs any external tools, manages any failures silently in the background, and it only hands the final compiled answer back to you when it's fully satisfied.
All right, let's jump to Section 3, Creating the Chat Interface.
We've got a brain, but now we need a face, right? Instead of spending days writing out these complex React or Next.js frontends, or wrestling with totally annoying manual CSS customization, our source introduces an awesome tool called Chainlit. Chainlit is an open-source Python framework that instantly gives developers this stunning, modern, ChatGPT-like conversational UI right out of the box.
The integration here is just beautifully minimalistic. By utilizing just a few simple Python decorators, we can bind our backend directly to the front-end chat window. So the onChat decorator sets up the environment the very moment a user opens the app. The onMessage decorator grabs whatever the user types in, and sending a Chainlit message pushes the agent's response right back onto the screen. It is remarkably, literally effortless.
Which brings us to Section 4, Real-time Streaming and Memory.
Because listen, a chatbot isn't very useful if it forgets who you are right away. Out of the box, LLMs are stateless. That means every single time you ask a question, it completely forgets everything you just said a second ago. So, how does the agent remember your conversation after, say, an hour of chatting? Well, to solve this, we've got to introduce session memory.
We actually establish a stateful application by creating a running list, like an array, the exact moment the chat starts. Every time the human speaks, we append their text under a user role right into this list. Then, every time the AI responds, we append its text under the assistant role. The trick is, with every single new prompt, we feed this entire expanding list back into the agent. Now, boom, it has the full context of the entire conversation.
But what about the actual feel of the UI? To further enhance that user experience, we absolutely have to transition away from synchronous waiting. I mean, nobody wants to stare at a spinning loader for 30 seconds until a massive paragraph just suddenly pops onto the screen, right? We want asynchronous streaming. We want to watch the text generate token by token, word by word, in real time, just like all the top-tier modern commercial chatbots. And achieving this is surprisingly simple in the code. By just tweaking our runner method from run sync over to run stream and setting up a quick loop to capture the response text delta event, which, by the way, is just a fancy technical term for the incoming chunks of text, the UI instantly feels snappy, responsive, and super modern.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, Equipping Agents with Custom Tools. Let's give our agents some hands.
So within the OpenAI SDK, tools are created using the function tool decorator. It's so clever. You just write a standard Python function, say something that calculates math or maybe pings an external server, and you just slap this decorator right on top of it. The agent's framework automatically parses the function schema, reads its description, and then it decides precisely when it's appropriate to run it based on whatever the user prompted.
In our source material, the developers actually built two specific tools to show this off. They created getWeather, which fetches the temperature for a specific location, and Student Finder, which looks up database records based on a student's roll number. They just passed these functions in an array directly over to the agent.
But what's truly amazing is watching the background events unfold. When a user asks for a student's record, you don't just get text back. You can trace this beautiful cascade of background events. The agent receives the prompt. It pauses its text generation, physically calls the Student Finder Python tool, waits for the output data, ingests that data, and only then formulates a natural language answer for the user. It's doing all the heavy lifting for you.
I think this quote from the source perfectly hits the nail on the head regarding the magic of modern agentic frameworks. The agent is responsible for taking your input, breaking it into subtasks, using available tools, and compiling the final answer when it is satisfied. You know, you are no longer writing rigid, clunky if-then logic. You just provide the problem, and the framework takes complete responsibility for the complex execution.
So by combining the OpenAI SDK, Gemini's free tier, and Chainlit, you literally have a blueprint to go from zero to a fully functional, state-of-the-art AI application with zero API overhead. You've got the brain, the memory, the tools, all of it. The only question left is, what incredible tool are you going to build next? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this sparks some major inspiration for your next project. See you next time.